Here's what happened, guys. When we first started this ownership series, I mentioned privacy, a sacred gift for human beings and a fundamental aspect of our human dignity. You being able to share an intimate moment with someone else and to not have a group of people watching is such an important gift that we have to protect in our society. But there has always been this issue between our privacy and security. And relating to surveillance, we can go back to 1968 in Olin, New York, when the first street cameras were installed. And now in a world of AI, more and more Americans are talking about privacy, and it's becoming a top priority. And it's getting louder and louder in the national conversation. And there's an opportunity here for us as small business owners to differentiate in the marketplace and how we market to our customers or clients and even our employees too. Because when we can say that we are not recording our customers, how are they going to feel then when they go into another business where they start to notice the cameras are around, all around them, inside to outside, watching them as they eat their food? It can make you feel uneasy. I know it does for me. I was just walking earlier today around a retail center where there was 3 buildings, and I started to count how many security cameras. At first, I didn't feel uneasy, but then after counting over 30 cameras on just 3 buildings, I felt very uneasy. And I think about how this could be pushed moving forward in the future to start to channel this massive change that we are experiencing in a way that can be a net positive for our society. Because for me, I want a future where I don't have to lock my doors. I don't want to have to go into an armored vehicle every time I'm trying to go out just to go to the grocery store. That's not a society I want to live in. And as small business owners, we are early adopters. If that is for new technologies, new strategies, new methods, new ideas. And so there's an opportunity here to market that you're not recording your customers or your clients, or to let your employees know that you trust them enough to not have to record them. This short-term thinking that we have been, that this narrative that we've been fed is that to only focus on the short term, and because there's an argument there to say that you can increase profit when you're noticing the behaviors of your employees to your customers, there's an argument there. But then what are the long-term consequences of that? And then, and especially if not all businesses are getting on board with this, and there's starting to be a clear distinction of there are certain businesses that won't record you, what does that then do for your business long-term if you're one of the ones that continue to record? What impact does that have on your bottom line? Because again, it has been talked about for the efficiency and being able to monitor people as they eat. But when more and more Americans are waking up to that fact that happens and how they can feel uneasy, and even me as a business owner, and I can see the argument for the efficiency, and I feel uneasy knowing that there's over 30 cameras on just 3 buildings. I can only imagine other Americans, what they're feeling. And you can actually let me know in the comments how you feel about that. For this surveillance, this mass surveillance that has continued to rapidly grow in our country. So I want to be able to lay the groundwork for you, because next week I want to get into this more. But we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the invention of the security camera by a Russian physicist and inventor, Lenin Terman, who was commissioned by the Soviet government under Joseph Stalin, communist, to create the security camera. And then for the U.S. government, used security cameras for atomic bomb testing, or atomic bomb tests. And so the track record for how this got started for the invention is a terrible track record. But I want to give you a little bit of history here in the U.S. of how it then went into commercial use. And we got to continue to ask important questions and push back against what we have been told for decades, which is this argument for our safety, for our security, there is a need to have more cameras. Because as I go into it more and where things don't make sense, I've said it here before on the show, get curious, ask questions. As I get more into it, it doesn't become so clear that it's because of security cameras that we are safer and more secure as a country. And there can be signs pointing to actually the complete opposite. And it's something even that we can ask ourselves. Do we feel safer now than we did even a few years ago? And I know for me, the answer is no. And of course, it depends. Depends where, what city, what town, where do I know my surroundings? Am I familiar with the city or the town? But it may not be so clear that security cameras is the main reason, the main driver for why we feel safer and more secure. The argument that has been told to us, or the point that has been made over the decades for why you should invest in a security camera for your house, or why you should invest for your business to have security cameras. And of course, there are exceptions, there are outliers, there are scenarios that we can point to as examples of saying, here, this is why we need a security camera for our house, because we had someone try to break into our house. But then we got to overall look at it from a society, for our society, of the net positive or the net negative. Does this build more trust between us as neighbors, or does this continue to create more resentment and continue to build more distrust between neighbors, between us as Americans, and between us and our government? Because I love this country, and I hope that you love this country too. And this country is not perfect. It's got a lot of problems. And we as Americans and as small business owners, we get to decide what the future is going to be like for our country. We got to remind ourselves of that, because it can get really helpless out. We can feel really hopeless out there. And we got to also now figure out what are the strategies, the tactics to move forward into that future. A future with this movement of making America a small business renaissance. Making America's future a small business renaissance. And when we understand the different ways that we can move forward and have clarity on that, it can make it a lot easier to move forward. Doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but it can make it a little bit easier. And we know in this time that we're living in now with the war in Iran, the U.S. national debt over $38 trillion, Gen Z being the most indebted generation for their age group in the history of the U.S. There's a lot that can cause us to feel hopeless out there. And this isn't to create just a little bit of hope and nothing behind it. I mean, I'm not into that, but I'm into what can we do from a strategy perspective to move forward and to make America's future a small business renaissance. Because I do believe the renaissance is coming. Chaos is temporary, but we got to continue to talk more about this. And so when we look at the history here in the U.S., we can point to CBS Labs, which designed the Vericon system, which became the first commercially available system. And so this was starting to be put out, this was starting to be used by businesses. And then, as I said, in 1968, in Olin, New York, was when the first security cameras were installed, or first street cameras, that were installed. I would not be surprised in the future that there are signs posted, or in advertising it's posted, camera free business, or we won't record you. Because what I've noticed now, and you could even look around in your area, you can notice where it says, smile, you are on camera. But when there can be a key distinction here, that in the long term, I really do believe that there's an opportunity here for small businesses to differentiate in the marketplace and to move away from this surveillance state that is continuing to grow here in the U.S. and push back against this and actually continue to build trust within our communities, between our neighbors, and between us as Americans. because there are plenty of stories out there of relating to security cameras, of how it's actually been, how it's violated our privacy. One of which is the Airbnb story, where Airbnb guests noticed that there was a camera in their room. And also with now the developments, the technology developments of that hackers have at their disposal, getting more into that and learning more about that, we got to determine whether or not it's becoming a lot easier for hackers to hack security systems, and to be able to look at us, and to record us without us knowing who's actually on the other side of that camera. And again, with how this is all stored, it's not just a person looking at a screen like you could see in the movies, looking at a bunch of television screens. Now it can be recorded, and we can and you can look at the data, depending on what day, for when the security cameras were in use. But this comes back to, are we building a society that is on a foundation of trust, or of resentment, distrust, and secrecy? And I want to live in a world where, and specifically a country here in the US, that is focused on telling the truth, of trusting one another, of not having to lock my door every time I go to bed at night, and not having to get into an armored vehicle to just go get groceries. I don't want to live in that country. And this is where we got to push back. This is where we got to say no to continuing the growth of a surveillance state, and be able to leverage effectively the strategy of camera-free zones. And then when you realize that we all have a camera in our pocket on our phone, it continues to make even more. It makes it doesn't. It continues to not make sense of why then we need so many cameras around us. That's on buildings, business buildings, to lights, like all these other questions can come up. Like, does this make sense to continue to have security cameras on business buildings? So next week, I want to get into this more, but it's something to think about. And it's an opportunity I do believe that we have here moving in the next decade for small businesses to take advantage of in their marketing and to be transparent. I don't believe that, I believe transparency is a winning strategy for the long term for businesses. Business reputation might, especially for something that may be owning up to a mistake that you make as a business, but short term, there may be a hit to the business reputation, but long term, you protect your soul. And we got to remind ourselves of the importance of that, of protecting our soul, of continuing to be honest, and to continue to seek out the truth, and to continue to figure out ways to build trust with each other. So more going to be coming in. More is going to be coming about this next week, relating to privacy. But I wanted to start to set the groundwork for you, and I'd be really interested in your experiences and what you've noticed walking around your city or town, noticing if there's been more cameras that have been placed around your town, and to ask ourselves, does this make sense anymore to continue to have this amount of cameras when we have a camera on our phone? Something to think about. And then if you were, what I want to let you know too, as a business owner, if you want to connect with other small business owners who care about our country, then you can join us in Charleston, South Carolina. You can go to this link here, afuturefest.com, on January 14th and 15th, 2027, and join over 300 small business owners to be able to connect, to understand what could be some amazing strategies to implement moving forward into the future, what to think about for the future, and to be able to continue to move forward and make America's future a small business renaissance. So see you guys next week.